101.5.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan joins us right now. And Governor Hogan, as I've done with everybody that I've talked to, we still have COVID-19 and this environment surrounding all of our issues that we deal with today. How's your health, the First Lady, your family? How are you?
We're all doing great, C4, and I couldn't be more proud of the city of Baltimore, I'll tell you that.
Well, let's get started right there, Governor. Yesterday, we saw thousands of young people take to the streets in Baltimore City, and according to Baltimore City Police Department, only 6 arrests overnight as relates to this. What do you think we've kind of learned from 2015, Governor, when you had to deal with the riots in our city?
Well, I think the city's come a long way. I mean, first of all, I think that the citizens of Baltimore, just having gone through that, the pain of that 2015, did not want to see it happen again. And so we had thousands of people out expressing their very legitimate and real frustrations and anger, but peacefully working together in cooperation. I mean, it was something you did not see around the country, and there was so much cooperation. There was a handful of these extremists who had a violent agenda, and most of the peaceful protesters were stopping them for days from doing the things that they were doing in other cities, which was fantastic. So I'm proud of the young people. I'm proud of the citizens, the community organizers, the leaders. I think that Mayor Young did a great job. The Baltimore City Police were so much more prepared than they were in 2015, and the Maryland State Police and our MDTA and MTA police, along with the National Guard, helping to assist and transport all the police officers in and out. It was a very well orchestrated effort by everyone involved, and I think we really did I think we performed probably better than any city in America, and I think we set an example for how you can really go out there and express your frustrations peacefully and work and show how maybe we can get some positive change without the violence and the destruction and the looting and the burning. I guess the thing I was most proud of was the way that the peaceful protesters were stopping these folks that had the bricks and the rocks and the gasoline that they were trying to light things on fire. It started even earlier. They were calling in. They found these big piles of rocks and bricks and the gas in the bottles, and they were pointing out the people that were throwing the stuff and actually dragging them over to the police and saying, arrest them. It was incredible. And every other city's on fire, police cars on fire, stores being looted, police stations being taken over. And Baltimore was just a beautiful, peaceful protest with thousands of people, and the city was safe. It was just incredible.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is on board with us. And, Governor, when it comes to these marches, it's not over, by the way. We're going to have more of these.
No.
What role right now, you mentioned the different National Guard, MTA police, what role are all of those law enforcement agencies playing with the city right now?
Well, so we've been in constant communication. We've been embedded with the city police. The state has been working in close cooperation with them. The city, Commissioner Harrison, the Baltimore City Police are the front line, and they're running the operation. But we were there to provide whatever assistance and backup they needed. A couple times, both Friday night and last night, when the city police asked for backup, we had the state police teams along with teams from the MDTA and MTA ready to come in to assist whatever the city police asked them for help on. And we transported them in on both city and all of our state agencies in on Maryland National Guard vehicles. So they provided the transport, which was really helpful because if you notice in other cities, they smashed all the windows and slashed all the tires and burned all the police cars. We didn't have any police cars in Baltimore City. We all came in on trucks and didn't lose a single one of them. So it was a well-orchestrated plan, but I take my hat off to the city police. I'm very proud of the job that they all did, and we were happy to back them up and work in a coordinated fashion.
Well, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, we all are aware that you're the chair of the National Governors Association, and in that role, a conduit with the White House. There was a call yesterday that was getting a lot of play where the President of the United States said that many governors were acting weak. As a matter of fact, there was an interaction between Governor J.B. Pritzker from Illinois and the President specifically. I just want to get your take on the governor's role in this. Do you believe that the governors are acting weak in this fashion?
Well, look, I think I brought up the issue of peace through strength yesterday because it's what we did last night. It's what we did in 2015. If you remember 2015, the city was overwhelmed. The city police officers were outmanned and were ill-equipped, and while they were trying their best, they were trapped by protesters. They were throwing bricks and cinder blocks on their heads. We had 137 police and firefighters injured in the first few hours. People were slashing, fire hoses and then throwing bricks at the firefighters. And so we had to come in with the state police and the National Guard, but we brought an overwhelming presence, 4,000 guardsmen and 1,000 police officers. But we immediately stopped the violence. No more burning, no more looting. Nobody ever got hurt. And we allowed peaceful protests to continue for a solid week. And so I think having the ability to keep the residents safe without becoming aggressive and without interfering with the peaceful and lawful protests. And that's what we did in 2015. That was an example. That's not what happened almost in any city in America. I think we sort of wrote the book on how to handle this in 2015, and this was an even better version of it this time, because I think the community was much more involved, and they didn't want to see it happen again. And the city police was much stronger and much more prepared.
We're speaking of Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, and I mentioned that, Governor, in terms of the phone call with the President, because after that, yesterday, President Donald Trump invoked the Insurrection Act, which hasn't been invoked nationally since 1992, and President George Bush invoked it after the riots following the death of Rodney King. And I just want to ask you, as it relates to this, because the President's basically saying, I'll send federal troops in. What are your thoughts about federal troops coming to Maryland?
No, I don't think that we need federal troops, and I don't think that there are going to be federal troops, and I'm not sure that the president can send federal troops unless it's at the request of a governor. So, look, we have had a great plan, at least in our state. It starts at the local level with the local police. We're our state police forces. All of our state agencies are there to work in conjunction with them and back them up only when needed. And then the guard in support on the back lines in the third row if needed, just to keep the citizens safe. And that's the way it should work. That's what the citizen soldiers of the state National Guards are for. But I don't think we do need to send in the active duty military.
Governor Hogan, when it comes to, if you don't have enough to deal with in terms of COVID-19 coronavirus, we have an election today. Now, it's mostly mail-in. We have about 6 sites in the city specifically where a lot of the activity marching is going to occur. Have you thought about also communicating with the city in reference to Election Day, keeping folks safe as they go out? There's very few going out, but the few that do go out to vote.
Well, first of all, I want to encourage everybody who hasn't voted to get out a chance to get out and exercise their right to vote, because it's critically important. And I think many people, the folks that are going to vote, most of them already have voted by mail and taken care of that. But the folks that need to get out today, I think they're going to be safe. We're in constant communication. As I said, we have all of our state agencies are in the Baltimore City Police Command Center, working in conjunction with them. And I think everything seems to be very well under control. There was a handful, obviously, of some troublemakers who came into the city or that were not part of the normal community protests that were organized. But I think we so far have been able to keep them pretty much under control and keep the violence down. I think people are safe and they ought to get out and vote.
Governor Larry Hogan, there's been a lot of questions about mail-in voting, and I heard you mention this before, but I wanted to ask you about it. Are you confident in our mail-in voting process and the fact that it is not necessarily anything where fraud could be entered into?
Well, I think there was some pretty bad screw-ups by the State Board of Elections and the City Board of Elections on getting these ballots out on time, which we want to get to the bottom of how that happened. But with respect to the safety and security of the vote, I think we're going to make sure that the process is secure, that there's no election fraud going on. We've been doing vote by mail for many, many years. In Maryland, you can vote by mail for any reason whatsoever, absentee ballot for no reason. We're just doing more of it because the COVID-19, more people are voting by mail, and it's so far we've never had a problem. We feel like it went pretty well in the special election when Kwesi Mfume was just elected to replace Elijah Cummings, and we think it's going to go pretty well today. Hopefully, I know that we're all watching and hoping that the city and the State Board of Elections can administer the election fairly. I'm not as concerned as some of the rhetoric we hear about. I think it's going to go well.
So what are your thoughts about November? Have you thought that far ahead? Are we planning kind of doing the same thing? Because it won't be a vaccination, before the end of this year.
Yeah, well, it's up to they're an independent board that makes their own decisions, and we don't have much say in what they do. But I think we're going to obviously know a lot more as we get closer to November about where we are with this COVID-19 crisis. Our infection rate is way down. We're making great progress. We're close to 350,000 tests. We've cut our positivity or infection rate by 60-some%. So hopefully, it'll be much safer, and we'll be able to get some people out to vote in a safe and effective manner. But if we've got a spike and we've got issues in the fall with the seasonal flu mixed with COVID spikes, then we'll have to consider continuing to focus on more vote by mail. We want people to be able to vote, and we also want to keep them safe.
Governor Hogan, you and your recovery team, I'm sure, are concerned about this, but all the governors are. We've been admonished to keep social distancing and everything else, and now with these protests, our own Phil Yukobowski, who's been reporting on this, has maintained, and he says when he's on air, maintained his social distance from things. But if you look at those crowds, Governor, nobody's social distancing. Are you concerned about that 2 weeks from now, what that might look like?
Well, they asked me about that. A lot of my fellow governors have been talking about that. Look, we've got concerns about social distancing all over as we reopen and more people get out and around more people. But this was kind of the first. One of the first instances of, in some cases, thousands of people being jammed together when, just a week ago we were concerned about more than 10 people being together. Many of the people were wearing masks, which helps protect people somewhat, not the people wearing the masks, but keeps them from spreading the virus. But time will tell. I mean, it's certainly still not safe to gather in large numbers in close proximity, and we saw an awful lot of that. So hopefully it's not going to be bad, but it's definitely something that the doctors and the scientists are worried about.
So you're still looking at things in our trend. You've been talking about trending towards you going to stage 2 now as we move forward, Governor.
So our numbers have been great. We just, we're tracking all these different numbers every single day. Today we dropped down to a 10.5 positivity rate, which is, I think, 60-some% drop. It's the lowest we've been since April 12th, I think. It's quite a ways. And we're down in nearly every single county. The only two, Baltimore City, by the way, is below state average at 9.7%. Actually, Baltimore City is 10.3, so below the state average. Baltimore County, 9.7. Anne Arundel's 10.1. Almost all the major counties. Frederick's only 9.4. Hartford, Howard. The only two that are still higher than the state average are Prince George's has our highest at 15.2 and Montgomery at 13.4, but they have both dropped more than 60%. So we're doing well all over. Our hospitalizations are down, our deaths are down, and our intensive care unit beds are down. So all of that is positive. We're going to be looking at continuing our safe, gradual, and effective reopenings, and we'll probably be taking a look at some of that this week and in the weeks to come, and continue to try to get some of our economy back on track and get people back to work and back out into somewhat normal life, but do so in a safe way so that we don't have spikes come back.
And the reason I ask you that, Governor, is because, you've been very clear that you have this roadmap to recovery, not a calendar to recovery. So when we talk about stage 2, you're not looking at a date necessarily, right? You're looking at what the numbers show.
Right. So we said our plan says 2 weeks of a plateau or a pattern of plateauing or downward numbers in those categories. We now have stage 1 started 3 weeks ago, and all the numbers are down. So we're very excited about that, and I think we're ready to take some further steps.
Okay, we're speaking with Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, and as it relates to all that's happening with COVID-19 coronavirus, Governor, and the recovery team that you have, I had President of Senate Bill Ferguson on last week. I've got the Speaker of the House of Delegates, Adrian Jones, on at 11 today. They've been concerned about their communication with you and your agencies. As a matter of fact, President Ferguson has talked about the lack of the health department showing up their COVID-19 work group. What's your interaction with them, Governor?
I had like an hour and 40-minute meeting with President Ferguson, I think, last week, and I think the health department, they have another hearing again this week, tomorrow, with I think the health department participating. So, look, we're in the middle of a state of emergency and a global pandemic, and our teams have been working 7 days a week around the clock. We're doing an incredible job. We're way ahead of schedule on testing. All of our numbers are down. We've been trying to get our economy reopened, and I think there's maybe frustration that we haven't communicated every day about every action, but the legislature will have plenty of time to talk about all of the actions we've taken. But in a state of emergency, I've done 40-some executive orders that don't involve the legislature, and they can come back at a later date and see whether they like them or not. But we're not going to ask permission or have debates or have hearings that figure out. These are actions that have to be taken immediately, and we just don't have time for a lot of that.
Yeah, Governor Larry Hogan, you've been very clear from the podium about your frustration with the whole unemployment distribution of resources to our citizens. I've had the Secretary of Labor, Tiffany Robinson, on, Governor, on a regular basis, updating my audience in reference to where things are. But still, some people haven't received a payment. I'm getting text messages for 11 weeks now. 11 weeks.
Yeah, I had a big, long, major meeting on unemployment yesterday with them. Sadly, C4, and I talked about this in a press conference last week, somewhere around 20 to 30% of the people never will receive a payment because they don't qualify under the federal program. And so the problem is we've got to do a better job of communicating that out to those folks and getting the others taken care of. Something like 400,000 people have gotten their payments taken care of, and all the folks under this new program, I think 95% have been handled. But there are a bunch of folks, if the employer does not certify that it doesn't sign off on the thing, you can't get paid under the federal program. The federal program requires you to keep reporting every week, and some people do not do that or don't understand. So it's very frustrating. We're trying to find ways around it. We're trying to find ways to get people paid. Unfortunately, it's a very cumbersome new federal program that has lots of things that say if you don't check all these boxes, you'd get disqualified, you're ineligible. And rather than just denying everybody, I think the department is trying to find ways to get them paid when the federal government would say, no, they can't be paid. So it's a lot more complex than it sounds, but we're still working to try to figure out. And one of the things I talked with President Ferguson about was we'd love to have any ideas about how you can do it better. There was a suggestion to just pay everybody and figure it out later, but that's against federal law. The federal government won't do that, and our Secretary of Labor would have to go to federal prison if she did that. So we're going to have to figure out another solution.
I'm just going to end on that topic and finally talk with you about Baltimore City in a moment. But, Governor, if it could be communicated with, one of the frustrations is they can't speak to somebody, Governor.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I have the exact same frustration, C4, and you sound almost, I said the same words you just said. There are, again, like 400,000 people who got their checks, a whole lot more who are in this, and they can either be communicated with and say, sorry, you don't qualify, which may be the easier way, but instead they're trying to help work through a complex program. They have to be very well trained people that are educated in federal unemployment law, and they can work their way through this. So it takes hours to work with each person to see if they can get them. They have to get employers to sign off on things. They got to get documentation. You can't just do it over the phone or on a website for many of them.
Right.
So it will take sometimes weeks and months to try to work to get somebody something, or you can just say no, you don't get it. They've chosen to try to continue to work through the problems for folks, but I agree. Sometimes you're just going to have to communicate that they don't get the money.
Governor Hogan, and finally, I had Commissioner Michael Harrison on yesterday, and if you don't have enough on your plate as well with COVID-19 and everything going on with the protests and everything else, we had 2 more murders again yesterday. We ended the month of May with 39 murders. We're on a pace to go beyond the month of May with 39 murders. We're on a pace to go beyond last year's record murder count. That was the big issue before COVID-19. Just your thoughts about where we are with violence in our city.
Well, it still is the big issue, C4, and it's the issue that I've been focused on. If you remember, all throughout the entire legislative session, before the session started, when I gave my State of the State address to the legislature, over and over and over again, I said, if you do nothing else, you have to address this violent crime situation in Baltimore City. The Senate actually passed most of our violent crime package. The House killed it all at the end of the session, and so we have no action on violent crime. It was disgraceful, and we continue to have 340 murders in Baltimore City, and those issues are not going away. It's still the number one concern of the people of Baltimore City and the people of the state. And so while we're focused on the senseless murder of George Floyd and so many other African Americans, we still have such a long way to go to try to live up to our nation's highest ideals. We have another issue of 343, folks being killed last year in Baltimore City, and we've got to address that one too.
So, Governor Hogan, what's your message to Marylanders listening? We have COVID-19, we have protests in the streets, we have all these. What's your message to citizens right now, Governor?
I think we've just got to be hopeful. I started out the conversation this morning, C4, saying I was proud of the city last night, and I think maybe they started to show how real positive change can happen, and we just got to continue to work together, continue to focus on how we can make improvements. I think while Baltimore City certainly has its more than its fair share of problems, and the state has things that we're dealing with, I think we showed a strong, compassionate, fairly united community that was better than what we saw in a lot of cities across the country.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, once again, your family's health. I hope you stay well, and we'll talk very soon, Governor. Thank you for the time.
All right, thank you.